At exactly 0619 local time, the morning silence over the northern Arabian Sea was shattered not just by the roar of outgoing aircraft, but by the frantic updates appearing on the tactical displays of the United States Navy's Carrier Strike Group 5. The USS Abraham Lincoln, a 100,000-ton sovereign territory of the United States, was in the midst of a high-intensity launch cycle, pushing strike packages into the sky every 90 seconds for operations over Iranian airspace. Above the strike group, an E-2D Advanced Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft circled at 25,000 feet, its massive rotodome scanning the horizon for any hint of escalation. It found it in the form of 4 distinct radar and heat signatures, rising rapidly from a valley hidden in the rugged terrain east of Jasak. These were not tactical rockets. They were Shahab-3 ballistic missiles, liquid-fueled assets climbing on trajectories that converged on a single coordinate, the flight deck of the Lincoln itself. On board the carrier, 5,000 sailors and 44 aircraft sat atop 2 nuclear reactors, suddenly transformed into a target for weapons moving at Mach 5. While these ballistic threats were 15 minutes from impact, the tactical situation on the surface indicated that the Iranian forces had no intention of waiting for the missiles to arrive. 90 miles to the west of the Lincoln, the USS Spruance, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, detected 30 low-altitude contacts on its SPY-1D radar. Emerging from the thick coastal fog, these contacts moved in a staggered line at barely 100 knots. Within 4 seconds, the tactical action officer classified them as one-way attack drones, the low-cost, mass-produced Iranian variety. Individually, each drone was worth less than a used pickup truck, but each carried a warhead capable of tearing open a machinery space or shredding a radar array. Simultaneously, 90 miles to the east, the USS Michael Murphy detected 28 additional drones approaching from a different vector. The 1MC General Announcing System roared through every compartment of both destroyers. General quarters, all hands to battle stations. Watertight doors were slammed and dogged as sailors sprinted to their posts. On the deck of the Spruance, an MH-60R Romeo helicopter, armed with Hellfire missiles and a door gunner already scanning the waves, tore itself away from the flight deck to provide an aerial screen. On the signal bridge, 2 sailors struggled to position an electronic jammer while activating the Nolka decoy system. This sophisticated system allows a ship to project a false electronic version of itself kilometers away from its actual location, essentially swapping its house number with that of an empty patch of ocean to confuse incoming seekers. At a range of 9 miles, the Spruance's 5-inch Mark 45 main gun swung onto bearing and opened fire. Each 70-pound shell was equipped with a variable time fuse designed to detonate a ring of shrapnel 30 meters from the target. The gun didn't need a direct hit. It only needed to be close. The first airburst successfully brought down 2 drones, while a third absorbed shrapnel and continued flying on a single engine. The automatic loader on the Spruance cycled at 20 rounds per minute. Track, fire, slew, re-engage, with a new cycle every 3 seconds. Despite the efficiency, the drones closed the gap by 400 meters between every shot. As the drone count dropped to 21, the Michael Murphy was engaged in the same desperate rhythm to the north, its own 5-inch gun firing rapidly, while 50-caliber machine gun teams handled any drones that managed to break through the outer perimeter. However, the command staff soon realized the drones were merely the preamble. High above, the Hawkeye updated the ballistic track. The 4 Shahab-3 warheads were now at their apogee and beginning their descent. With only 13 minutes until impact, the report was broadcast to every ship in the group. The Spruance and the Murphy acknowledged the data, but continued their focus on the drones, as neither ship was equipped to intercept warheads falling from space at Mach 5. The rhythm of the defense was then interrupted by a report from the surface radar operator on the Spruance. Multiple surface contacts were closing fast at 40 knots from bearing 085. These were Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps fast attack craft, some of which were configured as remote-controlled explosive vessels packed with enough ordnance to cripple a destroyer. The tactical dilemma was now critical. The main 5-inch battery was occupied with 18 incoming drones to the north, while the boats were charging from the east. The Spruance executed a hard-to-port turn at full flank speed, throwing a wall of white water over its stern to disrupt the coordination of the approaching wolf pack. By forcing the boats to break formation and reset their approach, The crew bought the only currency they had left: time. The stabilized Mark 38 25mm chain gun locked onto the lead boat at 2,500 meters, walking tracer rounds across the water until the boat's engine casing detonated. The Romeo helicopter engaged a second boat with a Hellfire missile, leaving it dead in the water with 7 missiles remaining in its magazine. To the west, the Michael Murphy faced a similar crisis with 8 fast boats approaching from the shallow coastal waters. The Murphy's tactical action officer had to choose between 16 drones from the north and 8 boats from the west. Recognizing that a 1,000-pound explosive boat hitting the hull at 40 knots was the more immediate lethal threat, he swung the main gun west, accepting the risk of the drones and relying on the smaller caliber guns and the Phalanx CIWS to hold the line. It took 3 minutes to suppress the boat threat, by which time the drone count had dropped to 9. On the Spruance, 8 drones remained, entering the terminal zone where the Phalanx close-in weapon system took over. The autonomous 20mm Gatling gun, firing at 4,500 rounds per minute, began erasing the remaining drones from the sky in a matter of seconds. Just as the crews began to catch their breath, electronic warfare operators on both ships broke the silence with the dreaded call: "Vampire! Vampire! Vampire!" An Iranian coastal battery on the Makran coast, which had been passively tracking the destroyers without emitting radar signals, had launched 4 NOAA anti-ship missiles. These missiles, advanced Iranian copies of the Chinese C-802, were flying just 5 meters above the waves at near-sonic speeds. The timing of the launch was calculated to exploit the moment when the destroyers were most distracted and their ammunition stores most depleted. The Spruance still had 9 drones in its outer zone, while the Murphy had 7. Neither ship could ignore one threat for the other. On the Spruance, the tactical action officer activated the vertical launch system for the first time that morning, firing 3 SM-2 missiles to intercept the NOAAs. This required the SPG-62 fire control radars to illuminate the targets, a process that meant they had to leave the drone bearings unprotected. The ships maneuvered violently to present the smallest possible radar cross-section to the incoming seekers. On the Murphy, 2 SM-2s were launched as the Nulka decoys worked to bend the flight paths of the optically guided drones into the empty sea. The SM-2 missiles require constant radar illumination from the ship to see their targets in the final seconds of flight. Because the Murphy had 3 incoming missiles from different angles and only 3 illuminators, any maneuvering caused blind spots where the interceptors would fly unguided for crucial fractions of a second. While the first SM-2 hit its target at 9 miles, a second interceptor lost its lock during a hard turn. 2 more SM-2s were immediately launched, successfully neutralizing the remaining NOAA missiles at a range of 6 miles. Both destroyers remained intact, but the Iranian strategy had succeeded in one key area. They had wasted 13 minutes of the strike group's time. The ballistic warheads were now only moments away from their terminal descent toward the Lincoln. What the Iranian commanders did not know, however, was that a third American destroyer, the USS Frank E. Peterson Jr., had been watching the entire engagement in total silence. As the designated ballistic missile defense ship for the group, its combat information center had been quiet, preserving its magazine for this specific moment. The Peterson Jr. was armed with SM-3 interceptors, exo-atmospheric vehicles designed to leave the Earth's atmosphere and collide physically with incoming warheads in space. This hit-to-kill technology is often compared to hitting a bullet with another bullet while both are traveling at 10 times the speed of sound. The Peterson's tactical action officer had been calculating solutions since the initial Hawkeye report. On the flight deck of the Lincoln, all operations ceased. The catapults went cold as a Super Hornet sat idling at full military power, unable to launch because the SM-3 sensors could not distinguish between a friendly jet and an enemy warhead. 5 SM-3s roared out of the Peterson cells, piercing the atmosphere. In the vacuum of the exosphere, the kinetic interceptors separated from their boosters, using cold gas thrusters to align themselves with the falling Shahab-3 warheads. The first 3 intercepts were clean, resulting in the immediate disappearance of 3 radar tracks. However, the 4th track suddenly split at 70,000 feet. One object slowed down, a decoy, while the other maintained full terminal velocity. The SM-3's seeker, programmed to identify such tactics, reacquired the faster object and successfully pulverized the warhead through pure kinetic energy. Debris burned up in the atmosphere as the Lincoln's flight deck returned to life. The E-2D Hawkeye had saved the launch coordinates for the Iranian ballistic sites since 0619, and the transition from defense to offense began immediately. Two FA-18E Super Hornets from the VFA-41 Black Aces launched from the Lincoln's waist catapults, followed by an EA-18G Growler from VAQ-133. The Growler was equipped with the ALQ-249 next-generation jammer, which flooded Iranian radar frequencies with electronic noise, making the incoming strike package appear as a mere equipment malfunction to coastal operators. The jets crossed into Iranian airspace at low altitude, heading for the coastal road east of Jazak. Using the advanced targeting forward-looking infrared system, the weapons system officer in the lead Hornet scanned the road, identifying 4 heavy transporter erector launchers, the vehicles responsible for the morning's ballistic attack, moving toward hardened tunnel entrances at 35 kilometers per hour. If these vehicles reached the tunnels, they could be reloaded for a second strike. The crew identified the thermal signatures of the launchers, still radiating residual heat from their engines and the recent launches. Just as they prepared to engage, a shoulder-fired MANPADS missile was launched from a hidden position in the southern tree line. The wingman called out the launch, and both jets executed high-G defensive maneuvers, deploying flares to decoy the heat-seeking missile. The distraction cost the pilots 90 seconds of positioning, during which the launchers moved closer to the safety of the tunnels. With fuel levels dropping and a second MANPADS team spotted repositioning on a ridge, the lead pilot began a steep dive. The lead Hornet released 2 GBU-38 JDAMFs, which used GPS guidance to steer themselves toward the moving launchers. Both bombs detonated simultaneously, tearing the vehicles apart and igniting secondary explosions from the remaining fuel. The wingman followed up with 2 more GBU-38s, striking the tunnel entrance just as the heavy armored doors were retracting. The strike package then turned south, with their fuel gauges hitting the yellow bingo state as they crossed back over the Gulf. In total, Iran had expended 60 drones, 4 anti-ship missiles, 20 fast boats, and 4 ballistic missiles against the carrier strike group. They achieved 0 hits. In exchange, they lost every combatant vehicle involved and their high-value ballistic launchers. The most expensive assets lost by the United States were approximately $8 million worth of ammunition, a small price for the survival of a nuclear aircraft carrier and the neutralization of a major regional threat. If you found this detailed breakdown of the engagement informative, be sure to watch our other video covering the opening day of Operation Epic Fury. Until next time.